My father's message hit my phone at 8:17 p.m. I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. No call. No warning. Just 14 words after I had spent 4 months rescuing his company with my money, my systems, and my name. I stared at the screen, then typed one word. Okay. Before midnight, I removed my cards from every payment I had covered. Payroll gaps, insurance, supplier deposits, all of it. 48 hours later, my mother called sobbing. "Tina, what did you do?" I looked at the unpaid bills on my table. The better question was why my father expected me to stay disowned and keep paying. Thanksgiving at my parents' house always smelled like sage-browned butter and coffee that had been sitting too long. My mother, Linda, kept smoothing the same wrinkle from the tablecloth while my father carved the turkey. Evan told a story about landing a major commercial account, and Ashley tilted her phone until the whole table fit inside the frame. "Family business," she said, smiling at the camera. 3 generations strong. I noticed my father's coffee had gone cold. He had opened a bill under the table, read it twice, then folded it into his shirt pocket before Evan could see. His hand shook just enough to rattle the silverware. I knew that look. I had spent 15 years walking into struggling companies and finding the problem everyone else was trying not to name. At 38, I made a living fixing broken operations. Inventory, payroll, delivery routes, waste. The unglamorous things that decide whether a business survives. My family liked telling people I was brilliant. They just never thought brilliance belonged in the family company. When Evan and I were teenagers, Dad asked us to organize the garage. I spent hours labeling drawers, counting tools, and building a system anyone could follow. Evan moved a workbench, swept the floor, then left to meet friends. Dad came home, looked around, and slapped Evan on the shoulder. "You've got an eye for leadership." I stood beside them holding a roll of labels. That became our family pattern. I made things work. Evan made things look good. Dad praised him. Mom told me not to be sensitive because I was the strong one. After dinner, Dad pulled me into his office and shut the door. The vent hummed above us. A framed photo of Evan in his high school baseball uniform sat behind the desk. "We're in trouble," Dad said. He showed me late payments, rising labor costs, and supplier notices. The business had only a few months of breathing room. "Does Evan know he thinks it's temporary?" It wasn't. Dad reached across the desk and covered my hand with his. "Help me save what I built." For 1 weak, hopeful second, I heard something else. "Help me build it with you." Then my phone buzzed with another unpaid bill. By April, the warehouse sounded different. Trucks left on schedule. Forklifts moved through marked lanes instead of weaving around misplaced pallets. Frank, our longtime warehouse manager, could find an order in seconds instead of digging through 3 stacks of paperwork. Monthly profit had climbed by about $35,000. Ashley filmed a video near the loading dock that morning. "New leadership," she said into the camera, smiling beneath a spotless hard hat. "Modern systems, stronger results." She turned the phone toward Evan. "Not me." I watched from 20 feet away with a clipboard pressed against my ribs. That was the first warning. The second came from the accountant. I had asked for the repayment schedule on the $150,000 I had advanced for supplier deposit, software training, and emergency operating bills. She lowered her voice. "Your father told me to record it as family support." I stared at her. "It was documented as a loan." "I know. Then why isn't it listed that way?" She glanced toward Dad's glass office. "You'll have to ask him." The answer came 3 days later. Dad called a family meeting. Ashley arrived in a cream suit with printed slides. Evan wore the expensive watch Dad had given him after our best quarter in years. My chair had been moved to the far end of the table. Ashley clicked to a slide titled Leadership Transition. Evan would take operational control. Ashley would become Vice President of Strategy. I would remain available as an outside advisor. Then came the ownership plan. Evan would receive the majority. Ashley would receive a share. I would receive 15%. 15%. I set my repayment records on the table. "When will the company repay the money?" I advanced. Dad pushed the papers back toward me. "You helped your family, Tina. Don't turn this into a transaction." Ashley had just presented herself a raise. Evan had bought a new truck the month before. But paying me back was somehow what made money ugly. Dad continued as if I had not spoken. "We still need the systems, of course, and you'll keep covering the software and insurance until the transition is complete." "No." Evan blinked. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not financing a company I'm not allowed to lead." Ashley folded her hands. "This feels emotional." I looked at her new salary on the page. "No, this is arithmetic." Dad's face hardened. Think carefully before you walk away from this family. I gathered my records and left. That night, my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. I read it once. Then I typed, okay. A payment reminder appeared above the message before the screen went dark. I spread the records across my kitchen table in 3 neat stacks. Money that belonged to the company. Money I had already advanced. Money they expected me to keep paying after cutting me out. The coffee beside my elbow went cold while I worked. At 7:10, the next morning I called Rachel, the attorney who had reviewed my consulting agreement before I ever stepped into Dad's warehouse. I need you to tell me exactly what I can stop, I said. And exactly what you can't, she replied. That mattered. I was angry, but I wasn't careless. Rachel walked through every payment, every message, every receipt. The company's money stayed untouched. Their data stayed theirs. The systems would remain active through the 30-day transition required by the contract. But my personal cards, my emergency transfers, the payroll gaps I had been covering, those ended immediately. Rachel paused over one bank statement. Tina, they've been using you as a line of credit. I know. No, she said. I don't think you do. She added the numbers again. Supplier deposits, software, training, insurance, operating bills, payroll support, about $150,000. Then she opened the messages Dad had sent over the previous 4 months. Can you cover this until Friday? We're short again. Just put it on your card for now. Family takes care of family. I had read those messages as requests. On that kitchen table, they looked like a pattern. By noon, I removed my personal cards from every account I was not legally required to fund. I stopped the payroll bridge. I notified the accountant in writing. I scheduled the remaining transition sessions and told Evan all future requests had to be documented. Then Rachel sent the legal notice. No more personal financing. No unpaid support outside the agreement. Repayment required. 30 days to transition. My phone started vibrating before the message confirmation arrived. Evan called 6 times. Ashley called twice. Mom left a voicemail saying Dad had only spoken out of anger and asking me not to make this permanent. I didn't answer. I wasn't punishing them. I was finally making them see the cost they had hidden inside my bank account. The first day passed quietly. The second did not. Exactly 48 hours after Dad's message, Mom called again. This time I answered. Her breathing was fast. Tina, did you cancel everything? I stopped paying your bills with my money. We're short on payroll. How short? Almost $60,000. Behind her, I heard papers sliding across a desk and Evan snapping at someone. Mom lowered her voice. The insurance payment is due. A supplier put an order on hold. Evan can't find the cash flow schedule. He has access to it. He doesn't understand it. That sentence settled between us. Not because it surprised me, because she finally said it out loud. Tina, please, she whispered. Your father is panicking. I looked at Dad's text, still saved on my screen. Talk to my lawyer. So I answered him exactly the way he had asked. Then his lawyer can call mine. The warehouse door rattled open behind me as Rachel and I crossed the loading bay. One truck sat motionless near the dock. Another had an order loaded halfway, then abandoned when the supplier placed the company on hold. Inside the glass conference room, the printer kept spitting out bills. Evan pulled out my old chair. Dad stopped him. Sit somewhere else. That was the first time I had ever seen my father remove something from Evan instead of handing it to him. I sat across from them and placed the records on the table. Ashley crossed her arms. Before we start, you need to restore the payments. No, I said. Dad leaned forward. You knew payroll was due. So did your new chief executive. Evan's face flushed. You shut us down. I didn't touch company money. I stopped using mine. Rachel opened the first folder. The bank statements showed every supplier deposit, insurance payment, software charge, and payroll transfer I had covered. About $150,000 in 4 months. I slid Dad's messages across the table. Can you cover this until Friday? We're short again. Put it on your card for now. Ashley looked down. Evan didn't. Dad said those were temporary. Then why is there no repayment schedule? No one answered. I placed the cash flow records beside the messages. Within 48 hours, the company needed almost $60,000 for payroll, an insurance payment, and enough cash to release 2 supplier orders. Dad had told me there was an emergency reserve. There wasn't. The reserve was me. You made us dependent on you, Evan said. I turned toward him. I built a schedule. I documented every payment. I held training sessions. You skipped most of them. That's not true. Rachel pushed the attendance records forward. His name was missing again and again. Ashley uncrossed her arms. This is hurting employees who had nothing to do with our disagreement. I warned the company in writing. The systems are still running. The data is intact. The transition period is active. I looked directly at her. What ended was the part where I quietly paid for your decisions. Dad's jaw tightened. You're punishing your family. No, I'm ending the subsidy. The printer stopped. In the sudden quiet, I could hear the vent humming above us. Then I said the part none of them wanted spoken aloud. You didn't disown me because I damaged this company. You disowned me because I stopped financing it. Mom covered her mouth. Evan stared at the table. Ashley's eyes moved toward Dad, waiting for him to deny it. He didn't. Rachel placed 2 written proposals in front of him. The first was a restructuring plan. The company would formally recognize the $150,000 it owed me, pay the remaining consulting and recovery costs, and put me in full operational control for 2 years. Evan and Ashley would have no authority over daily decisions. An independent accountant would review all major spending. The total obligation was about $220,000. Dad shook his head before Rachel finished. We don't have that kind of cash. You found money for Ashley's raise, I said, and Evan's truck. That's different. It always is when the money benefits him. Rachel opened the second proposal. I would purchase the remaining business operations based on an independent, distressed valuation. Longtime employees would be considered first. Dad could stay temporarily as a paid advisor. Evan would not be management. He laughed once too loudly. This company was worth over $1 million. It was, I said, before you were put in charge. His laugh disappeared. Dad pushed both proposals away. Cover payroll first, then we can discuss all this. I looked at the man who had asked me to save his life's work, then erased me the moment it survived. I trusted later once. Mom reached for my wrist. Tina, please, think about the family. I am. I gently moved my hand away. That's why I won't keep teaching Evan that someone else will always pay for him. Ashley's voice lost its polished tone. Then where are we supposed to get the money? I stood and gathered my copy of the records. That is a question for the people Dad chose to run the company. Charles looked smaller behind the table. You're really gonna walk out. You made your decision when you told me I wasn't your daughter. I glanced at the chair Evan had tried to take. Now you get to run the business without me. I left the room with Rachel. Behind us, nobody spoke. The payroll schedule remained open in front of Evan, and for once my empty chair could not save him. The first payment failed before the week was over. A supplier froze 2 orders. Then the insurance company warned them that coverage would lapse unless the balance was paid. Dad used personal savings to cover part of payroll, but that only bought time. Without my emergency transfers, every weak spot became visible. Evan missed another supplier deadline. He ordered the wrong materials for a housing project and had to sell them at a loss. Delivery costs climbed because no one maintained the routing system. Customers stopped accepting excuses. Frank called me one afternoon from the warehouse parking lot. Half the crew is gone, he said. The ones left don't know whether they'll be paid Friday. I closed my eyes. Those employees had done nothing to me. So when my own firm needed help, I interviewed the experienced workers who applied. I didn't steal records or contact anyone through company lists. They came because they were tired of watching competence get punished. Dad lasted 6 more months. He borrowed against the household equipment and delayed bills until suppliers demanded payment up front. By the time the bank moved against the remaining assets, the company had lost the trust that once kept it alive. Evan blamed the economy. Then he blamed Ashley. Then he blamed me. Nobody listened anymore. Ashley's polished business posts disappeared when the marketing budget did. She left Evan soon after the warehouse closed and moved to California with the children. Her final message to the family talked about choosing stability. Evan moved to Nevada and took a junior project coordinator job. No title, no company card, no friends on payroll, just schedules, supervisors, and consequences. Mom called me after Dad sold the house. Her voice was quieter than it had been during that first panicked call. I kept asking you to be the bigger person, she said. I never asked them to be better people. That apology mattered. It did not erase anything. I told her we could have a relationship, but there would be rules. No requests for money, no messages delivered for Dad, no pressure to rescue Evan. She agreed. 18 months after the company closed, Dad called. He admitted he had chosen Evan's confidence over my ability. He said he had treated my money like family property while treating my work like it belonged to someone else. Can we rebuild? He asked. I don't know, I said. But if we do, it won't be built on me fixing everything. We agreed to talk again. That was all I could honestly offer. My phone barely rings during meetings now. It sits face down beside our profit-sharing plan while my team talks through new projects. The chair across from me is no longer empty. It belongs to an employee who earned her place, and nobody asks her to pay for it. The phone that once carried my father's rejection now spends most days face down on my desk. That is what peace looks like for me. Not winning every argument. Not watching someone lose everything. Just knowing I no longer have to apologize or disappear to keep other people comfortable. I can love my mother without funding her fear. I can hear my father's regret without pretending it repairs the past. And I can leave Evan exactly where his choices placed him. Family should never require you to finance your own mistreatment. Love should not come with unpaid bills, stolen credit, or a permanent seat at the end of the table. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not destruction. It is withdrawal. It is letting people carry the weight they kept handing to you. If you have ever stopped paying for someone else's love, share your story in the comments. And hit subscribe so you do not miss the next story. I picked up my phone, turned it off, and sat back in the chair I had finally earned.